All right, what's going on? I'm going to be talking about the basics of making a good beginner setup today. Now, what you want to start off and do is pick a damage carry for your front row. Middle square here, Stack is a good option. So is somebody like Infernus. Someone like Kevin would probably be the most ideal option. But especially if you don't have Kevin, after beating JR Normal, Slime King could be a great option as well. This really just depends on what you have access to. I would say the things you're looking for, of course, first things first, good damage, right? And then AoE would also be great. So again, what I showed you as Slime King there. Also, if you don't have AoE, then just really good raw damage output, right? So that's kind of where the classic question of Slime King or Kevin comes from. While Kevin has better single damage output, Slime King has better AoE damage output. And honestly, whatever you're struggling on, you probably want to go and find someone who's able to solve that issue. So whether or not you're having troubles taking down a boss because they have too much HP, or troubles with too many enemies swarming your board. Now, for the purpose of this, I'm going to say that I will just be using a Stacky, right? Stacky is probably the most accessible, solid DPS carry in the early game, so I'll just say that I'm using a Stacky. Next thing you want to do is double buff that carry, right? So go ahead, get your Speedy, get your Mighty, and slap them in the front row here. Now, the idea with this is that you're trying to get as much damage up front as possible. This is to make sure that you are clearing enemies as fast as possible. You're shutting down bosses as fast as possible before they're able to cast a lot and take advantage of their abilities. And this generally just ensures for safer, better clears. Of course, there are some variations to this if you do have like global damage dealers, but we're in the early game here, all right? You're just using your standard damage dealers like Stacky, so get your double buffs. Next, in the middle, you want to support that front row, right? That's what it's all about. You're dumping all your gold into Mighty, into this carry, and into Speedy here. So you want to make sure that you're supporting this really strong front row. You're going to do this through the form of stunners. One of the best early game stunners that you get access to really early on is going to be Teddy, right? 3-second AoE stun. Of course, someone like Fury could be an option as well. And of course, something like a Sparky could be a good option. I have the evolved version. Please ignore that. Now with this second row here, second row stunners, you don't need to upgrade these guys. Of course, you're putting all your gold into your front row to maximize that damage. The stunners are there just for the ability. And of course, even if you update or upgrade these units, it won't increase the stun type or change the stun type or increase that stun duration. Basically anything with the stun ability itself, upgrades won't change it. So there's no need to upgrade. Now, two things you want to look for in the stunner mainly. Whether or not it's AoE, and then the duration. So all the stunners I showcase here are pretty easy to get, and they all have decent stun durations, right? 2 seconds, 2 seconds, and 3 seconds is pretty ideal. You can upgrade beyond just these stunners, right? For example, if you do manage to get an Archangel early on, someone like, I think this is Cassiel. Yeah, so the blue and yellow Archangels do provide stun. So if you do get someone like Cassiel, right? AoE on a stun, and the stun duration is pretty long. It might be 4 seconds, at least 3 seconds probably, but great stunner, right? So just pay attention to that AoE and pay attention to that duration. Again, for the purpose of this, I'm just going to put down those really easily accessible stunners, Teddy, Fury, and Sparky. Oh, and then I forgot to mention, a stunner like Ice Cappuccino has 3 seconds, but it is only on one enemy. So it might not be great all the time because I do think there's a lot of value in AoE if there are a bunch of enemies sneaking past. But if it's just 1 or 2 enemies and you want to really lock them down, then someone like Cappuccino could be good. It just really depends on the situation you're in, what you've observed in your gameplay. Now, after that, onto your third row. Third row is usually the weakest part of early game setups. You have a very limited amount of gold that you will be just dumping into your front row mainly. And so that creates a lot of limitations in the third row because let's say you do want to put a stunner in your third row, right? Well, even if you put a stunner, we'll say someone like Yeti, someone like Yeti, right? So even if you do put a stunner like Yeti, you're only going to stall something, or you're only going to stall an enemy for the other stunners to keep stalling them. So they're not actually receiving actual damage outputs because your carry is up front here. So the back row is honestly pretty useless in the early game when you have really limited gold and limited monsters. However, if you are able to stumble upon something, I don't even know how you would get this and be in the early game, but something with a strong global ability to use, like a Archimedes, I don't know, a Crispy, just anything that can interact with the map without having to directly be in front of the enemy, would be a good addition to the back row, even if they're really useless and barely contribute anything. So I think the most common form of this is going to be Felina, right? A lot of new players can get Felina early on, but they can't really use the 40 million gold to upgrade her, or even like 20 million. The millions and millions of gold it takes to get her to a level where she actually does a noticeable amount of damage. However, it would still be good to put like a level 2 Felina in the back row because she's contributing something, right? Just from being in the back row, doing that little bit of chip damage is probably more useful than letting someone like a, I don't know, Grimy sit in the back row and never do anything. But basically in the back row, if you do have anything that can interact with the map globally, I should say, then put it in the back here. Otherwise, I usually find that some damage dealers that might be able to reach over the middle rocks could be good. So that's going to be Clyde and Flamey here. As you see, their range can reach over into the second row a little bit, which might be a little bit of help. And then, you know, I guess just drop in some random damage or whatnot. But just the idea is that you won't really be upgrading these guys in the back row, and they're not really all that important in the end. So that's pretty much it with the whole setup structure. Being able to get your front row damage, mid row stuns, and garbage back row that maybe hopefully has some global interaction thing. In terms of charms, if you're in the early game, you probably aren't spamming too many level clears, right? You only get a charm after you beat a map. And if you've just been playing the game for maybe a few hours or a couple of days, probably don't have too many charms. So just slap on whatever you have. You know, something like attack speed would be great. Any sort of damage buffs. You know, just play it to the strengths, right? If you have stuns, then try and put on stun charms or ability cooldown charms, although you probably can't get those in the early game. Back row, whatever. Again, back row is not that important. And then front row on your stacky here or on whichever carry you're using. Just try and get those damage charms that could be beneficial. In terms of Speedy and Mighty, there are charms that should be able to help them, I think, like attack buff on Mighty. I'm unsure if this is still bugged or not, because as far back as I remember, it still does nothing. But yeah, I don't think Speedy benefits from any charms at all. Mighty might benefit on a boosting charm, although I'm not sure if they're going to fix that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm going to save the boring bit for the last part of the video, but it's been, let me just check the time so I can put timestamps for this, but it's been a year since I put my first video up here on the channel, or the oldest video you can see back, because I did kind of start YouTubing in, man, I think 2021 September, but it was for a different game. But if you check the channel now, oldest video you can find is January 1st, 2022. Basically this exact video, how to make a good beginner setup. So I thought I'd redo this. Yeah, it's been a pretty cool year. I didn't know that I'd be getting as much support as I did on this channel here. I just want to thank everybody who watches my stuff, interacts with my stuff anyway, with my videos, my YouTube. Just want to thank y'all for the support. Yeah, honestly, it's been really cool doing all this. I was shooting for, I think, 1,000 subscribers by the end of the summer, or by the start of the summer. And we ended up overshooting that by a lot. I think I ended up getting my first 1,000 in March. That was really cool. So, yeah, just want to thank all of you again. Really, thank you for all the support. And yeah, I hope this guide helped. See ya.